They were speaking in Kamala Harris land about the short time they had to establish two things: who she was and how bad a future under Trump would be, like to establish the big bad wolf and at the same time establish Kamala Harris. And that in looking at swing state voting, they had done well to rehabilitate essentially her numbers from where she started. They just didn't quite get far enough.
I think that's a very good analysis. Trump didn't get a majority in any of the three elections. He got a plurality. And I believe the plurality in the 2024 election is smaller than the previous two. I have to go look at the numbers. I just not sure my memory's right about that. But I think the big story is that 13 million people stayed home. It's the smaller number of people turning out. And when people don't turn out, either they don't care at all. Those are the habitual don't turnouts. That's always the number one choice in presidential elections, didn't care to vote. But when you see a drop of that size, it suggests to me that there's a lot of people who were satisfied with what was going on with the rising wages in the lower half of the pay scale, the falling rate of inflation. I just was in my car a few minutes ago hearing an NPR reporter talk about how the price of eggs is up 60% from a year ago, made no mention of the fact that we just had to kill more than a quarter of all the laying hens in America because of an avian flu, and didn't mention that turkey's less expensive this Thanksgiving than the previous one, and so are potatoes and a number of other things. So I think that she had this very constrained time. You and I know who Kamala Harris is and was, but to most people, they don't know who the vice president is. There's a Broadway play from long ago that was made into a movie in the, I think, 30s. It might have been the 40s, about a man who lives in a boarding house in Washington, D.C. And one night they go around the table and people are asked to talk about themselves, and they come to him. Well, what do you do? I'm the vice president of the United States. Oh, okay. And they go on around the room. I wish Turner Classic Movies, if they is in their vaults, would play that movie again. So, Donald won. I mean, I don't have any problem if people want to do a recount, but Donald won. I think the issue now is to understand what this means. And Mark, I have said for 35 of the 36 years I've known Donald creates his own reality. I've been testing that line on people. And what I've learned is a lot of people get what it means. There are a lot of people who are like, that doesn't mean anything to them. So Timothy Snyder, the Yale professor who is an expert on authoritarianism, has written some wonderful, very short books on this, gave an interview the other day. That's what prompted me to begin questioning what I was saying and whether it resonated with people. And he said, you have to understand that Donald Trump lives in a fictional world in his head of his own creation. Therefore, he's never does anything wrong. He never does anything he shouldn't, because it's all fiction. And of course, what he's done is managed to get tens of millions of people to buy into his fictional universe. So he just announced his tariff plan, how much he's going to impose tariffs. And as I mentioned last week and the week before on this show, tariffs will lead to higher prices on domestic manufactured goods to just below the tariffed price of the good from China, Canada, or Mexico, which are our biggest trading partners. Canada first, Mexico, and then China. Prices have to go up if that happens. That's inflationary. If we round up large numbers of people in the country illegally, two things have to happen. There won't be enough people to process slaughterhouses, to kill and dress meat, or to tend to crops. You don't just put seed in the ground and walk away. Tend to trees, to harvest the crops, to process them. That will mean higher food prices. And there won't be people who, for very little money, will do everything from cleaning your house or landscaping cutting your lawn, to a variety of other jobs. And that's going to be inherently inflationary. And many of the people in the country that Trump wants to deport have been here a long time. Bank of America started making mortgages for people who are in the country illegally more than 40 years ago. Well, Tom Homan, in charge of deportations, was asked on MSNBC, well, what are you going to do about the children of these people who are American citizens? We're going to deport them. You can't legally deport American citizens, no matter what their age is. So assuming they don't get a judge who says, yeah, you can deport them or ignore the law, that means your local county government is going to have higher costs. And the larger the number of children in your community, the higher the costs. So where I live in Monroe County, New York, Rochester, New York, not going to be a big deal. But if you live, as I have in the past, in Orange County, California, or Los Angeles, or Santa Clara County, or San Mateo County, if you live in any of the Arizona counties, Pima, Cochise, etc., your property taxes are going to go up as these children are left behind by their parents. And I think a lot of parents are going to do that. In fact, I was talking with one of my friends today about, imagine if you were in that position and you had children, say 8, 10, and 12. What would you do? And she said, I would leave them. And I said, well, they'd probably end up in the system. And she said, yeah, I don't think that would be as bad since they'd never been to my country, whatever it was, don't speak the language, as leaving and not possibly getting ever back in. And she said she would make sure that her children were talked to about, predators among foster and group home people. But there are going to be all sorts of costs that are going to flow out of these things because Donald doesn't think things through. He just makes up his own reality. And to think that China won't retaliate, China doesn't have to put tariffs on goods to retaliate. We need neodymium. Neodymium, you cannot make the microphone you use in your professional lab, a smartphone, a smart bomb. You cannot make these without neodymium. I wrote about this 20 years ago in my book, Free Lunch, how the Chinese cornered the world neodymium supply and its usefulness, which was developed with American taxpayer dollars. And China will just say, well, we're not going to sell you any neodymium, or we're going to sell it to you at 10 times the price. You want your military to suffer, America? Just do this to us, and you're going to hit back. The Donald believes that, I do something, and then people just bow down and accept it. That's not how the world works.
Yeah, by the way, this is a good question for you. Mo is asking, who gets to keep the tariffs that are collected, David K.
The U.S. government gets the tariffs, but they do not come from the countries. A tariff is, for all practical purposes, a national retail sales tax. And the profits made by domestic manufacturers that will increase, even if they have fewer sales, because if I make cars and I compete with a Chinese car maker, and we both sell right now for $10,000, and Donald puts a 60% tariff on, the Chinese car will now cost the consumer $16,000. I'm going to raise my price to $15,000. I'm going to make a $6,000 profit instead of a $1,000 profit. Even if I sell half as many cars, I'm vastly richer. And though that will result in profits to me that will be very lightly taxed by the Trump administration. So the actual tariff the government will get from the consumers. But the domestic excess profit that it enables, that will stay almost entirely with the people who own manufacturing companies. And this is essentially a scheme to enrich them. And this is textbook economics. I'm not out there with some edge theory. This is solid textbook stuff that was taught in Economics 101 last year, 10 years ago, 100 years ago.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.